Today we welcome Roelf Odendaal, the Business Development Executive of Boston Multi-Family Office, a multi-generational wealth company based in the lovely Isle of Man and Malta. So, if you have a successful business and want to ensure that your children and grandchildren and their children benefit and continue to grow the family empire, this interview is for you. Roelf, research shows that 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation and 90% by the third. How does one prepare a family business to be handed over to upcoming generations?
Ilse, I think that is a burning question for all entrepreneurs. And if you think about it, it's actually quite a natural progression that takes place. The entrepreneur starts, he's got a drive to create sales, to make business, to get income in. And usually that grows fairly well, but he sometimes forgets that he has a family that is in the background. And we get this natural progression where the children grows up, they become part of the business, and they work with their dad to build this business. So they see the late nights, the early mornings, the stress. They experience that with being with their dad in the business itself. And then over this third generation, when the grandchildren comes in, Granddad, who's the entrepreneur, is now a little bit more relaxed. He's made his wealth. He's done what he needed to do. And they experience Granddad as this relaxed person that just wants to play with him. And they don't see the sweat, the tears, the anxiety that goes with building a business. And I think in those two transfer of wealth, that is where things go wrong. The first transfer of wealth from the wealth creator onto the children. A lot of children, especially if they are not involved with the business, would grow up experiencing a little bit of wealth, but seeing the hardship of their dad. And therefore they feel it's their money, dad gave it to me. Or I don't like my dad, didn't like the business, I'm just going to take the money and run. But for me, the critical part is that second transfer of wealth, where the wealth goes from the children to the grandchildren. They grew up in luxury, they grew up in wealth, they know their grandfather as a person that would play with them, and they have lost that experience of the hardship that it takes to keep the wealth in. So they grow up with the expectation, the entitlement, that this is mine, I can spend it the way that I want to spend it. And in the process thereof, the wealth is completely destroyed. My experience is that in a lot of instances, it's not only the wealth that dissipates, but it's the family relationships that dissipate. Because the focus is now on my entitlement to wealth that my grandfather created, not so much as the family and what the family means to each other. And therefore, it's not only the physical financial wealth that dissipates, but that of the family as well. I think that the saying is short sleeves to short sleeves.
That's correct.
And if you're Dutch, it's from wooden clocks to wooden clocks. But it just creates that picture of a family who were poor, had a great wealth creator, but the grandchildren will most probably end in poverty as well.
And how do we prevent that?
It's not the easiest of things. It's a mindset that takes place. And it's I see that in South Africa that more and more entrepreneurs are aware of it. And in essence, we get two sorts of capital, two types of capitals. The first one is a financial capital. That's easy to explain. That are the rands and cents. That is the share capital. That's the profit that is generated in that. It's the dividends that's being paid. And it is what we live off. And the second part of capital are your non-financial capital. The big term is socio-emotional wealth, but it refers to the wealth that is within the relationships. And both those parts need to develop in order to prevent the dissipation of capital. As much attention needs to be given to keep the family together and the relationships together as what there is to keep the financial capital together. Now, my preference is that when we start dealing with the relationship within the family, that we look at it as if it is wealth. You know, it's something precious that we have to protect. Just as what we've got a savings account and we've got savings, we're careful not to overspend. The same attitude we have to have with our relationships within the family itself. And then overall, there's the family identity. And the family identity is driven by the family's purpose. Now, I think that if a family pursues a collective purpose, that purpose becomes the attention that drives the family. And we get the shift from my entitlement to money to live off to, as a family, we pursue this purpose. So therefore, the money that we have needs to serve us and our family, the relationships, and it enables us to pursue a purpose. So the focus is no longer the physical money, the financial capital. It is the socio-emotional and the non-financial capital. And I think if as a family you've got those rules in place, you create a level playing field where there's a greater proportionality to having a success in keeping the wealth in the family. And if I say wealth, I mean both sides, both the financial and the non-financial. Also, I think that is a good recipe to start with.
Yes. Rolf, you make me think now the word value.
Yeah.
You know, it's got such a wide, broad meaning. It's not just the value of things, the monetary value.
Yeah.
There's value, the deeper values, and
Yes.
the ethical and the moral and the value of closeness and good relationships, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. So I think this is something that's not just for the ultra rich.
No.
This is for everybody, even if you have like a corner cafe, small family business. Comes
Absolutely.
down to exactly the same. All the values of hard work, honest deals, teaching your children and grandchildren the real value of things.
Absolutely. And I love that word value because it's so wide in its application. And my philosophy, because I see both the financial and non-financial capital or wealth as one, in my eyes, there's a lot of people with little shops on the corner that are wealthier with people that has established this humongous trading entity that makes so much money, because that little cafe on the corner, actually the relationships are so precious for them. Their values is so precious. They look after community. It's them that will most probably look after the poor people. And how can you replace that? How can you put a monetary value on that? And I think the principle of what we are talking about cuts across all levels of sizes of business, all levels of wealth, because it brings us very much to putting a humanity, a person, an emotion, a softness within how we see money per se.
Now, money, you do need it. You can be how, sort of.
We can't avoid that one. We need it.
No. So now I need an injection in my business. Okay, so what should be the owner's strategy? He owns the family business, but he needs sort of an outside investor. How do you handle that?
So that is a long-term plan that needs to be kicked into place. Because that bringing a partner in is usually an exit strategy, a way for the wealth creator to take a step back, grow the business as it is handed over to the next generation. So there's a lot of changes that takes place in that particular moment. And it comes down to the family identity. It depends on how you define you as a family. It depends very much on the values that you have just mentioned, because the partner that you want to have will have to buy into the values of the family. So if you buy into a firm that does not subscribe to your values, you create the opportunity for a fallout within the shareholding structure. And that is one of the red flags that is raised in a business that can destroy a business immediately. If a family don't have that strong sense of identity, it's very difficult to evaluate prospective investors to come into the business. That is one side of the coin. And that is usually the side of the coin where the family wants to keep that identity of a family business. The family can make the decision, we as a family are going to exit altogether, and we would like to have our capital, and therefore we're going to sell to an equity firm, a private equity firm, or a venture capitalist firm. And it's at that point in time where a very difficult decision needs to be taken, that the family withdraw itself from the business. In other words, it takes its values out of the business. I had a lovely meeting this morning where the person reminded me again that we should never refer to our businesses as our babies, because it creates that emotional bond. But then when we get to that point where we have to bring that external shareholder in, it's very difficult, because it's like giving up your baby and you can't make that decision. My suggestion would be never refer to your business in emotional terms. Refer to your business in terms of identity, because then you create that level playing ground again where you can bring someone in. You've got something where you can evaluate whether this person you are bringing in will fit or not.
It's easier said than done. You know, if you're sort of the MD or the owner of a big business, a big company, and you've got this strong brand, and now you sell and they decide, oh, well, you know, they're going to change the name and the logo and everything of this firm because times are changing. It is a little bit like
and
that.
It's always that, 20 years ago we designed this logo and we sat around the kitchen table and now they're taking it away.
Yes.
It is so emotional and it touches so deep on the human heart and the human nature thereof.
It's like the tabletop brand that was very big here in George, and it's frozen food, and then McCain bought it and they shelved it. They basically, just everything became McCain. So that was a tough one to swallow.
It's a hard one. It is very emotional, Ilse.
Yes. Now, if I want to grow even further, what about expanding internationally? How does one go about that?
Expanding international is not for everyone. And I speak regularly with people that has the aspirations of expanding international. And then going through quite a series of questions just to check whether the person have the stamina, the ability, the mentality to grow something outside, whether there's enough capital to sustain that. It's multi-dimensional in that regard. And I'll start with the challenges that you face. The challenge is that you are resident in South Africa and you want to establish something in London. It means that you are physically distant. Your business in George, you have created, it's a 5-minute drive to the business and home, and suddenly you create something which is distant from you. It would mean that you need to get on an aeroplane and fly there every second week to make sure that things are right. But then that business is created under a different set of rules and regulations, which you do not know, and the finer nuances of what is being done. I had an interesting discussion with someone that deals with something in their business based on a law that was written in 1880. You need to have that wisdom of going back there. Those, for me, are the challenges that one faces. And if you don't have the aptitude or the want to delve into that, rather stay local.
But is that where a company like Boston comes in?
And that is where we come in, and we hold your hand throughout the process. We will introduce you to the laws, the regulations. We will make sure that things on that side is done right, it's done properly. And we will then also take it to the professional people that you would need to do that. We will open as much as possible doors as what we can for you to walk in with trade and do so. On the South African side, so from that side, we will make sure that things are done, that there's adherence to the laws, etc. On the South African side, to exit is equally important, and please do not do that without professional advice. Go and speak with a qualified tax advisor, exchange control advisor that can guide you through, because the capitalization needs to flow from South Africa to the overseas entity. And for that, there is tax consequences and exchange control consequences. There are people, and we are so welcome to contact us that we can help people with that. And it's a lovely journey to take. It's preparing the world for your children to move into. And I love that idea. I love South Africans expanding throughout the world and introducing boerewors to the rest of the worldwide society.
You see the positive side of it.
And there's always a positive side, Ilse, always a positive side. It is worthwhile for people to consider it. but it's not a decision to be taken lightly.
You live in the Isle of Man. That's
Correct.
your home base these days, but you're
Yes.
still a South African. You have your South African passport. You visit South Africa very often.
Yes.
Tell us about that sort of making that move, just
Sure.
shortly. Just sort of, you say that's a lovely experience to actually, because now you've become a world citizen, so to speak.
Absolutely, and the doors is open. My friends in the Isle of Man always teases me because I always say, if you cut my veins open, boerewors in biltong will come out. I'm fiercely proud of South Africa. I'm fiercely thankful for what South Africa has given to me as an individual. And I am South African. I just happen to live outside of South Africa. The journey of going across for us was not always easy. Far away from family, far away from illness, from death, and attending family marriages. And it's hard. But what we wanted to have is to be world citizens. That's what my wife and I set out to do. And living across have enabled us to do so. We were able to live there, enjoy the beauty, the goodness of the Isle of Man. But because we haven't given up our South African passport, we've got the luxury of coming back to South Africa. And for me, the crowning moment was when my daughter decided to take a gap year in South Africa.
Oh.
Well, what a bigger compliment. How cool is that? And she's enjoying it so much here because this is her roots. And she loves just spending the time here getting to know South Africa.
So what is she doing during her gap year here?
She's at a Bible school in Wellington called Leap. And I've got great respect that someone that is 19-year-old has decided to invest in a spiritual life, etc.
Yeah.
And Wellington is such a beautiful place. And Leap, the way that they deal with the discipleship school, deal with the students is great. It gives them the freedom to be mature, but also in a safe environment. And that for me was my main concern. In the Isle of Man, she could go for a walk on the beach at 10 o'clock at night and come back home because the door is not locked. She could let herself in.
I hope you briefed her very well before she came here.
But that was part of the concern, How do you prepare a 19-year-old girl for life in South Africa? And yes, we did have the chat around the dining room table about what to do. But going to a place like Wellington, you can't ask for better. Such a beautiful part of the world.
Wonderful. Last question. Money is often called the root of all evil. And we all know why many families have fallen apart because they fought about inheritance or the family business. Please tell us about family governance and the importance of preparing the family for the wealth that they will receive.
Ilse, again, this is a topic that relates to all families, whether you've got a business or not a business. But family governance refers to the way that the family govern themselves, how they make decisions, how they function as a cohesive unit. If there is a family business or if there is family wealth, then this part is just so much more important because we have to prepare for that moment that the rising generation is going to receive a lot of money. As an example, I spoke earlier in the year with a family where the youngest son, the dad was a distant father. He paid for the children for school and nothing else. Used to take the bus in Johannesburg to work and worked with his hands, a laborer. No relationship with dad whatsoever. Just to get a phone call one evening to say your dad has passed away and you have inherited $50 million. Now we all think,
wow, yes,
wow,
lucky.
this is amazing. But the young man's life is ruined because of all the cars that he went out and bought and the houses, the amount of partying that he has done. And within a number of years, 4 or 5 years, most of that money is gone. And it shows to me the lack of preparation of dealing with that wealth. And family governance is concerned about that. On the one side, we've got estate planning that deals with the physical preparation of wealth. But on the other side, family governance prepare the future generations how to actually walk into that wealth in a healthy way. And it starts with conversations around the dining room table. Parents not shy to teach their children how to deal with money. Giving pocket money is such an easy thing to do. Now, here's 50 Rand, go and do. But think, if I just give my child money, is that not breeding entitlement?
So what should you do? How do you do it?
It depends for each family. I've heard, yes, what I've heard.
Or what?
Yes, what I've heard. I've heard of a parent that have a list of tasks, and for each task there's an amount of money. So the first of every month at the dining room table, they will sit and child will say, I need 100 Rand today. And they will say, okay, you need to wash the dishes so many times, wash the car so many times, and for each one you will get money. And then you've got your money. And I think for entrepreneurs, that's a great way to prepare for it. Another father would give their child, save when they go on holiday, 100 Rand. And the arrangement is for everything that you don't spend, I will give you an equal amount as well. And I think it's a great way of teaching the child, yes, money, yes, you have to spend money, but savings is really important. Be careful, think about what you want to have, because you're going to get double what you have saved. There are different ways to do that, but it's with the parents understanding how they want their children to behave with wealth that guides that decision. And all of that is part of family governance. It's raising those children that they can make good and qualified financial decisions with their lives. It's not teaching children to be stingy. It's teaching children, you've got 100 Rand, you don't have to spend all of it. So let's think. It's important. So for instance, our family identity is that we love looking after people, especially the elderly, especially children. So you've got 100 Rand. What can you treat your friends? Can you take them out for a coffee? Okay, so if you do that out of your pocket money, next month I will give you an equal amount back. So we've used our family identity to guide our children how they should spend their money. And I think it prepares people for the wealth that they will receive one day. And I can only encourage parents just to take a moment and consider how they want their children to behave one day with the money that they have. Whether it's going to earn a salary, multi-million amounts of dollars, but raise your children to be able to do so. I know it's not always popular to have a dinner around the table, but those discussions, I can't emphasize how important it is for your children for the future. Not only for them as human beings to understand what the highlights and the lowlights of every day was, but it's for us parents to impart. If you do this, one day when you're an adult, this is how you're going to behave. And that for me is family wealth. Now, whether it's going to ruin, we never have a guarantee against that. But we can create opportunities for our children to prevent ruin. And I think that for me is the key thing. Give them options, help them, educate them, give them ideas, and trust them that they will use that for the best that they can do. But if your child is a spendthrift, please don't be disappointed. Love them for the human being that they are and support them for their decisions, and always encourage them to live within the identity of the family. So a broad subject here, Ilse, but I hope I've answered that fairly well. It's something that I've got a passion for. Family governance is not only for wealthy people, but it's essential when you do have wealth.
Absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. I can't wait for you to come back to South Africa and to George specifically so that we can do a follow-up conversation.
It will be my pleasure, Ilse, and George is one of my favorite places for holiday and to come. So looking forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilse.
That was Roelf Odendaal of the Business Development Executive of Boston Multi-Family Office.